Hello, Christian here. I'm the host of the Disruptive Chef Entrepreneur Show. And I know I say this at every episode, but today's guest is absolutely amazing because we all need somebody who sees in us what we don't see in ourselves, especially if he goes around strategic thinking, strategic marketing, and sales. And today's guest is an absolutely genius at that. So we start right after this. Hello, we are back. My name is Christian. I'm the host of the Disruptive Chef Entrepreneur Show, and I'm really excited for today's conversation because today's guest is the founder of a company called Richard Solutions. He is a strategic mentoring coach. He does strategic innovative marketing. He also teaches sales. And what I love about it, he started out as a chef, and from there went and worked with some of the biggest brands in the world. And they are today his clients, and he's their mentee. So from here, Richard, welcome to the Disruptive Chef Entrepreneur Show. We're really excited to have you.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm glad we don't have to look at my chef skills because luckily my branding skills are better than my chopping skills.
That, we don't charge on that anymore. So, but Richard, help us understand a little bit. First off, where are you calling in from? What do you currently do? And where did the stream of being a chef come from? And how did you evolve to what you do today?
Well, thank you. I'm in the UK, but I always think I'm a citizen of the world because I think, we live in a time where it's very easy to travel and talk to people. So I work all over the world. I have worked in lots of different countries on projects. My background is I've always been in marketing, and I spent sort of the first 8-9 years of my career in it, and then had this crazy idea of setting up my own food business and went to culinary school, had a Thai food business for a few months and really, really enjoyed it. And what I enjoyed was sort of the people side of it and setting up my own business. And I cooked some pretty decent green curry, if I don't say so myself. And, my chicken satay was, above average. Yeah. But what I realized was where I built my business was in the wrong location. And actually my real love is branding and marketing and mentoring and coaching. And I've been really lucky that I've kind of taken lots of experiences that I've had, both in marketing, but also going to culinary school and having my own business was, for me, a wonderful experience. And then for me, it's all about creative thinking. And I worked for an incredible design agency on some of the biggest brands in the world. And I've ran a business before setting up my own consultancy during COVID. And it was a wonderful thing to do. It's allowed me to share my love and my passion, which is people and helping people. But it's also given me the flexibility to support my family as well, which is very important to me. And I think one of the things that I'm sure lots of your audience will understand is that idea of balance. And for me, it's about how can I be in my zone of genius? My zone of genius is helping people, mentoring, coaching, branding. And unfortunately, my zone of genius was not at culinary school. And I think that's one of those things you have to learn. And I'm still very proud of my qualification. And my chef whites are hung up in my wardrobe. But I think it's that thing, how can you be in your zone of genius? And I certainly feel a lot more comfortable doing what I do these days.
I absolutely love that. I love that background. And from our culinary community, somebody like you, we like to call you a culinary constable. So, you're the guy which keeps us in check with branding and marketing and everything else, but you're still part of the team. So absolutely not to worry. So talk to us a little bit on how you currently help businesses to develop that strategic marketing expertise, which work in, we always tell them, hey, I can help you propel your growth and increase your market share. So how do you do that, and who do you do it currently for?
I do it for all kinds of different businesses. But what I think is a more interesting question than talking about my clients is actually that question of how do you do it? And I think what's really interesting is I find, having worked with global brands, you learn a lot about storytelling and you learn a lot about propositions and service and process. What's really interesting when you work with small businesses, and I often work with businesses normally under 20 people, Typically. There are a few larger ones, but on the whole, they're under 20 people. And I think what's fascinating for me is how they don't always necessarily understand who they are. And what I mean by that is they understand their product. Do they understand their customers? But also, do they understand what their customers think of them and how they perceive them? But a lot of the time, it is going back to basics, going back to the drawing board and saying, okay, what's your brand DNA? What is it? What is your purpose?
Yep.
What is your experience? What are your values? And where it becomes really interesting is it's bigger than just marketing. So once you've established your values, for instance, you don't recruit people on skill, you recruit them against the values, because you can teach skill. You know this from running kitchens and businesses. You can teach skills. If you recruit against values, then it becomes really, really interesting because you get the right people. You share those values on the website, you get the right customers. And I also really believe that you can learn so much from big brands. And one of my favorite experiences was in 2022. I went to Disneyland in Los Angeles, the happiest place on earth, also the most expensive place on earth.
That's why it's happy.
Yes, well, I think happy for the shareholders. I built a lightsaber while I was there that's behind me. And Disney is what amazed me about Disney, other than how much money it cost me, was just the experience and the level of that experience and how every crew member, everybody we interacted with was there to make our day fantastic. And for me, what can we learn from that? How can we benchmark from that? So if you're a restaurant, for instance, how do you make sure that every single customer, every single supplier, every single member of your team feels something? Because for me, when I went to Disney, and it's a great example, you got that impression, you got that feeling. And for me, you can learn so much from these big brands, and then you can bring that thinking into any business.
I love that. Obviously, you work with so many great brands. They all have their, let's say, shit together, isn't it? They all got it figured out, don't they?
I'm not so sure about that. Some certainly do. Some I look at them and as very lucky to have done some projects with the team at Jack Daniels. And one of the things I learned from them is how good they are at storytelling. And if you're going to tell stories, make sure they're true stories. When you work on some of the other brands, sometimes they have really amazing products, but struggle to talk about them. And you think to yourself, but you are, and I can guarantee that half the audience will have one of these products in their house. And they make incredible products, but they're not great at talking about them. And what's so interesting, that's a global brand. And you think to yourself, you've got to have your shit together. Yes, you've got great products, but you need to get better at talking about them. Doesn't that sound like many restaurants or businesses that you've come across? Oh, you've got a great menu, great customers.
I love that. And let's bring it back to restaurants, because what I see a lot of, maybe you can shed some light on it, is there's some amazing people out there, and they think their marketing is, I find this picture of a dish which I know I make, but this picture looks better than mine, and I just push it out there, and people will know that mine is really delicious. Or they put out a menu, and by the way, I hate PDF menus. They put out a menu where it doesn't even convert on my screen, and they think, hey, they're gonna come because I just had this really beautiful menu I put out there.
No, it's not enough. And I'm gonna, two thoughts come to mind. I'm gonna be really controversial here. My favorite food photography is not Donna Hay, and her work's remarkable. It's actually McDonald's. Go and have a look at McDonald's food photography. It is stunning. Forget about the quality of the food. Go and have a look at their photography, either on their adverts, on their restaurant menus, on the app. In fact, go onto the McDonald's website and go and have a look at the pictures. They are remarkable. So if you're going to do food photography, that should be your benchmark. Don't copy other people. Look at the standard and do something cool yourself. And the other part of it is there was a band in the UK and they didn't get signed. So they played gig after gig after gig after gig. And there was a record executive that was on a night out in Glasgow and went into this club and heard this band playing, went, these are amazing, signed them straight away. That band was Oasis, who did pretty well during the 90s and 2000s. I mean, who doesn't love Wonderwall?
Yeah.
What's great about that story is they kept putting themselves out there. Now, if you just play in the same pub and bar, you can be the best band that never gets signed. What impressed me so much about that story was they kept gigging and gigging and gigging and gigging. And for me, sometimes, do you want to be that great band that nobody's ever heard singing in a bar to two people? Or are you going to put yourself out there? Because if you put yourself out there, yes, you stand a chance of nothing happening. But put yourself out there and some incredible things will happen. Don't be scared. Do
I
it.
love that. Listen, you're spot on, Richard. And for me, as you started talking about this, it reminds me of this. As COVID happened, there's two restaurants. So we have this major highway we live on, and at the beginning of the highway, there was a restaurant, and in the end, the one in the end was a very known 3-generation Italian restaurant called Carmen Anthony's. They had 8 or 9 locations in the area. In the beginning, there was a guy who started a barbecue joint. And COVID happened. The guy from the beginning on the barbecue joint went to Home Depot and he built a hut outside, because when people could come and deliver, they didn't get rained on, because his wait staff always complained when it rains, they hate bringing food out there. So, and then he was out there, he says, oh, when people think about it, there's a grocery store down the street. They show on a video screen what the guy's doing in the bakery, because you can't see him in the bakery. I should put that video screen out there so people can see how we cook the meat, and little things. And you know what he said, what was a point of differentiation for him? He says, I have this guy who trims the chicken, and I took a video. He says it was 8 seconds. And I said, look what he does. He trims the chicken because only the perfect chicken is good enough for my clients. And people came and said, this is amazing. Nobody else cleans the chicken like you. Everybody cleans the chicken. You know what I mean? But he told the story about it. And he says, it was 8 seconds. It changed my business forever. And now he has 3 locations. And the locations we'd had, 8, 9 locations, is out of business. Because he innovated. And when I went back down to Carmen Anthony's, you guys need to do something else. They were saying, no, people will come us because we are part of the cornerstone of the community. We've been around for 3 generations. We have people which come. They never came.
But that's the way we've always done it. How many businesses have you heard that expression? But that's the way we've always done it. And I think where it becomes really interesting, and that's why I use the story of Oasis, you have to put yourself out there. Just having a great menu or just having a great product, well, that's super. But you're going to be that band playing to 2 people. And I think there's that little bit where, how do you put yourself out there? That's maybe a different topic. I think what's more important is you put yourself out there. And it's one of those ones where if you don't put yourself out there, you'll never know. And I think there was an expression where, Michael Jordan, he only scored the shots he took. Take the shot.
I love that. I love that. And let's stay with that thought process. Or are there some key elements to consider when positioning a brand, especially a new brand or existing brand, in a marketplace?
I think for me, it's how can you be different? Or how can you do something different or do something better? So there's a plethora of fried chicken restaurants in the UK. And this is I really like this one, because obviously KFC, you American people, you keep invading us with all your food chains. So we've got KFC, we've now got Popeyes have arrived, Wendy's have arrived, Burger King, thanks for that one. And
yeah, and did we send you Chick-fil-A yet? We sending you Chick-fil-A, so that's the next level.
Lucky us. And I think what's really interesting is you've got all of these chicken restaurants, and then you've kind of got the rip-off. You've got like Alabama fried chicken or Tennessee fried chicken. There was an independent that's set up, and they do fried chicken, but it's called Chicken and Sours. It's a super restaurant in London. There's a couple of locations. They've got a food truck. There's one right in the centre of Covent Garden. And they did something called gourmet fried chicken. And if you go into the restaurant, they have a sign up in chalk. This is what KFC would cook if they took magic mushrooms. And if you go onto their Instagram, they do a whole fried chicken.
I love that.
They do a whole fried chicken. So on the Sunday, you have to pre-book it. They fry a whole chicken and put sauce on the top. It's great fun. The food's fantastic. So you talk about how do you enter a new market? Go do
Mhm.
something different.
Mhm.
Go do something different.
Listen, I so relate to that, but where do you or how do you help somebody says, I understand I need to do this, but it's totally different. I know I did this for the last 20 years and it always worked. I know it will continue to work. I just need to get better at that. And I hear this all the time. How do you not just I don't like the convincing, because if they're convincing to do it for you and not for themselves, but
Yeah,
how do
true.
you get somebody to understand that, you know what, learning something different, and I honestly believe we all learn at the deepest level of our failures. um, how do
Oh
you
yeah.
how do you help somebody who really never failed because they've been successful for 20 years doing something and the business just slowly trickles out? How do you help somebody like that?
I think where it becomes really interesting is sometimes people want to do revolutionary change. And
Hmm.
I actually think that sometimes you need to look backwards to go forwards. So I'd be very tempted to turn around to that person and say, okay, what made you successful in the past? What are those key factors? And then what I like to do is I like to challenge people. So I'd turn around and say, okay, well, let's go and look at somebody in a totally different sector. What are they doing well? And I almost get them to start probing a different business and going, well, they're doing this, well, they're doing this, and that process there is very good, or their social media is really interesting. Okay, what can we learn from that and bring into you?
Hmm.
Because just you becoming better at your skill, you're already a master at your skill. How can you talk about it in a better way? And I think sometimes you have to make people uncomfortable, but do it
Hmm.
in a way that, there's an element of my brand, it's even in the logo, where it's me putting my arm around somebody. And that is almost taking that person and saying, well, what is this company? What can they do better? And then you start getting them in that mindset, pulling out those cues, and then they go, oh, I could do that for my business.
And I love that. And I encourage our listeners to check out what you do. Um, because I think you're extremely good at it and you make it sound so easy. It annoys me, because you make it sound so easy. And then also I look at there's traditional business consulting. Okay. But you approach, and I want you to talk a little bit about this. So how does your approach to mentoring differ from traditional consulting? Because for me, when I heard it say, oh, he's a consultant. No, he's not a consultant because he doesn't do traditional consulting stuff. And for me, I look at your brand. It has that sense of elegance to it. It has that sense of playfulness. And for
Yeah, bit of
me, I
rebellion.
think people are drawn to that, and you're innately good at this. How do you bring people onto that and kind of looking at this? Because I don't think that's a learnable skill. I think you have a gift, and I think that what makes you as successful as you are. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
I think for me, I have a mantra of don't be boring. And I think a lot of coaches and mentors and quite a few marketing people can be a little boring. And I think there's a little bit where everybody will tell you, every business coach will tell you, work on your business, not in your business, and we'll do
Hmm.
some smart objectives. Okay, everybody needs smart objectives. I do
Hmm.
something a little different with my clients. So I do something called success factors. And what I do is I ask my clients, right, 5 things that each month define whether you're a success or not. So I'll share mine
Love
because I have them
I love that.
myself. I have them written on my wall here, but I pulled them down because they're now just ingrained in me. And I know I can share with you whether I hit them or not. And with success factors, my 5 are: do my clients enjoy working with me?
Hmm.
Do I enjoy working with my clients? Can I get paid? Yeah, I've got bills to pay. It's a
Yep.
success factor. Am I flourishing? And can I do some volunteering? So I look at
Hmm.
July that's just passed, and I've hit all 5. Now, everybody's success factors are different, but what it does is it gives you something that I like to call business scaffolding. So, how do you know
Hmm.
if you're successful? Some people, I don't know, want a Ferrari and want this, this, this. Yeah, fine. But if you're going to each month go to work, why are you going to work? What are those motivations? And those success factors are almost indicative of my approach. Yes, you need smart objectives for a business, of course you do. But for
Hmm.
an individual, my approach is different. Let's do your success factors, because at the end of the month, you can look back and go, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. The other month, I didn't hit volunteering. Instead of beating myself up, going, oh, you've missed one of them, I recognized it. And then the following month, did a bit more towards that. So I think for me, rules are there to be broken. And I think one of the joyful things about if you're a business owner is you get to set your own rules. And I think sometimes we forget that. And you know, I think because you get to set your own rules, you can break them and you can do some interesting things, and we forget that. So for me, it's about how can I do things that I find interesting? Because boring, no.
I absolutely, I so relate to that, and I love this. It's such an amazing conversation. So can you bring it back and give me an example or two as a chef? You know, we are the Disruptive Chef show here. What is a technique, a tool, a strategy, or a system a chef can adapt to do exactly that and do it in a very short period of time and see some results, you know, a week or two down the line?
Yeah, I mean, success factors straight away is one thing that I would look at, because, you know, just doing service is not enough. You know, I work with another client that wants to be proud of their work. What a great thing to have. One person wants to have continuous learning, and it's one of those ones that very quickly helps you make better decisions. And I think there's also a little bit where if you work in a kitchen as a chef, you're used to uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. It's hot. It's cold. You know, that you're under pressure all the time. So how can you make yourself uncomfortable outside of those physical conditions? How can you make yourself uncomfortable that you grow? Because actually you said you learn more from failure than you do from success. I agree. When I ran my Thai food business, it's one of the things I'm really proud of, but it was an absolute failure. But I learned about product, price, place, promotion. And I think, how can you learn? Because if you're just comfortable, well, that's nice. But how can you be uncomfortable? Because if you're uncomfortable, but not in a causing yourself pain, but an uncomfortable as in, how am I developing? And it's not just developing your craft. And don't get me wrong, there's always things that everybody can learn to improve their craft. But how can you be a better team player? How can you be a better leader? And how can you invest in your education outside of just learning different cooking techniques, which is a great thing to have? But how can you be a more rounded person? How can you be open to new ideas and new thinking? So very quickly, you change.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I hope our listeners here just rewind back 3 minutes and just listen this over again. And what I love, I mean, we kind of played it and you made it, you know, two chefs. But for me, if you take the word chef out and you put in farmer, electrician, plumber, it, it's universal. And I think that's where your zone of genius is. You make it, again, it's upsetting for me because you make marketing so easy, and when you talk about it, it makes so much sense. And for me, it is, you make it universal, and I absolutely love that about that. And for me, I hope our listeners, again, you know, please, first off, mark this episode, make sure you save it, make sure you share it with a friend, and you need to listen to it over, because there's a few nuggets you just dropped over the last few questions, which could be a masterclass on how to look at marketing. And also not just how you look at marketing is changing. And I think what you bring to the marketplace is what is needed. It brings, you know, we so overconnected yet underrelated. And I can watch you, even, you know, I always said you need to have a show. I would watch you all day long. It's because you make it so relatable, and you have an innate ability to connect with people. And for me, you know, that's what I admire, and hopefully our listeners will check out and hopefully do some work with you, because that's not a learnable skill. I think that's just your zone of genius.
Thank you. I just had a thought while you were talking about how do you learn marketing. And I think, you know, you can use AI, you can go on a course, but you can do something that's completely and utterly free. And I worked with a brilliant creative director for many years, and we were walking in New York. We'd had lunch in Soho, and we were walking up to a meeting on near the Empire State, and it was really nice because we didn't have our phones on us there in our pockets. And my colleague turned around and said, turn round. I go, why? Turn round. And turn round. And there was the flat iron. And I've been to New York many times. I've never seen the flat iron.
Yeah.
And what was really interesting about that was, how many times do you see people walking around on devices? And actually, for me, when you you stop and actually look, you can get so much inspiration. What I mean by looking, not just looking at buildings, but next time you're driving to work, why did that billboard stand out? When you're on social media, why did you stop the scroll? And how can you take that thinking into what you do? And the example is, I know a lot of restaurants will go and look at other restaurants' menus. Why not go and have a look at the guest reviews? Why not go, sit, eat the food, and go, what's good, what's not good? Go and have a look at that restaurant's social media. Go and have a look at great people, as well as the awful ones, as well as your competitors. Go and have a look at why does the Cheesecake Factory do so well? They've got this ridiculously big menu. How does it work? What's good about them? Because there will be things that you can learn and bring that thinking in. You might not, we're not talking about the quality of the food, although their s'mores cheesecake is rather fun. It's almost looking at, what can we learn from these people? And for me, it's about walking around with your eyes open. What catches your attention and why?
That is so good. So good. So what do you see from your perspective? What are some of the emerging fields of marketing and sales? And how can a chef and a hospitality business prepare for them?
I think there's two things. One is the rise of AI. You know, it's part of our lives already. And I think where it becomes really interesting is how you use it. And I think as a chef, you can use it for inspiration, for menus. You can use it as inspiration for process and systems. You can use it as inspiration for social media, and even down to those restaurants that have kind of got the chatbots and everything else. I think where it becomes a challenge is when I see social media that's paint by numbers. Here's the AI. You can tell that's an AI post. We're still humans. We want that little spark of inspiration. Yeah. But I think when you look at ChatGPT, you can, for instance, you can go and ask it anything you want. Write me a blog about seasonal foods in August featuring key SEO words that feature in an Italian-American restaurant in New York. And then it will produce a blog for you. My challenge is, if you just post that, anybody could do that. Go and put your own twist on it. Or go and ask AI to give you 10 content ideas and you go and create it yourself. So I think AI is a massive one. I also think, we're still in the age of digital. And I think there's a little bit about, okay, how can we harness digital to bring people into real life experience? So how can you do something in the digital world that creates a feeling or sensation that people want to experience in the real world? And again, this is not a new idea, but how can you create how can you give your customers and consumers content that they can share? And that's not just, beautiful dishes where camera eats first. It's also thinking about, how can we give our guests something special that they want to share? And what's really interesting is 30 years ago, that might have been in a bar or a pub. Oh, you've got to go to Smoking Joe's restaurant. It's great. Now that's done digitally. How can you give people the tools and the experience or whatever it is so they can share your story?
I love that. I absolutely love that. And again, you make it sound so simple. But for me, I love this conversation, and I can talk to you forever about marketing because you look at it so differently. And everything you said, and by the way, I have a page of notes, from checking out chicken and sour, the 5 things, what make you different and all the things you have. So I have a whole bunch of notes here. For me, this conversation has been amazing. So Richard, help our listeners a little bit understand and maybe look a little bit behind the scenes. So what are you working on for the next 6 months on your business? And what are the things you're working on Richard for the next 6 months?
It's a good question. So I'm sort of working on a number of private clients on their DNA at the moment. In the background, I'm working on creating a program for neurodiverse business owners. I think what's really interesting is many micro businesses So under 20 are often led by neurodiverse people, and you paint by numbers doesn't work for this community. So I'm looking at building ways that I can bring, that kind of business stuff that you need to know, but in a way that is more digestible for the neurodivergent community. So that's a little something I'm working on in the background, which is going to take a lot of work, and I've got a brilliant partner that's going to be helping with that. So that's sort of an exciting thing that's sort of bubbling in the background, that I'm really, really, really excited to bring to life. And I think there'll be many of your listeners that will be neurodivergent, and neurodivergent people, and myself, I'm ADHD. There is so much we can learn from this community, and how can we support them in order to be the best versions of themselves? Because there's so much creativity and brilliance there. They just need a little bit of scaffolding to help them achieve that.
Love that. So, Richard, help our listeners to understand, where can they learn more about you, more about your business, and how you approach the marketplace?
Yeah, well, you'd be very welcome to come onto my website. It's richardsolutions.com. They can find me on LinkedIn, Richard Liverman. You'll see a big sign that says "Don't be boring" on my website, and you'll see it on my social media. I'm also on Instagram, Richard Solutions Global, and I'm regularly posting content out there. And what's been so fantastic is, meeting people from all over the world. And for me, what's so fascinating about that is bringing their stories and their thinking into what I do. So please feel free to connect and have a conversation.
I love that. And to our listener, if you haven't done so, make sure you save this episode. You share it with a friend. Make sure you like it. Also, leave a comment. What do you think about what is your 5 things which make you difference? Absolutely love that. I want to see what you guys as the listeners feel it is. And then also, if you want to have more information about additional content, behind the scene glimpses, or updates on some of the new upcoming episodes, and all of the new things we do, join our disruptivechef.club, which is our private community where you get the latest and greatest on the front row seat for all the things we do new. So with that, Richard, there's a little surprise we have for you. I heard you volunteered for our rapid fire question. So what we would like to do with you, my team here provided maybe 30 different questions to get our audience to learn more about you. We can learn a little bit what makes you tick in the food industry. And this is our rapid fire question, food service edition. So if you open it up, we ask you 5 questions, answer, as it comes to you. And so the way it works is you give me a number between 1 and 30. I read the question and then you can do your thing. So you're ready for that?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Mr. Richard, first question, 1 and 30. What number will it be?
Oh, it's Thierry Henry's number 14.
Number 14. Ooh, what is the strangest food you have ever seen?
The strangest food I've ever eaten is a more interesting question. I would go crocodile, kangaroo, and crocodile, kangaroo. Yeah.
I think that's pretty high up. So that's awesome. Next question, between 1 and 30. Give me that number.
We'll go number 1.
Oh, number 1. What is the most unusual dish you have ever created?
Most unusual dish I've ever created was probably for my children. They wanted a nacho surprise.
They were surprised.
There was a lot of surprise. There was a great book when I was a kid growing up, George's Marvelous Medicine. It was written by the same author that did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And in the book, he makes this medicine for his family, and all kinds of crazy things happen. And in that nacho surprise, there was just sweet, savory. It was memorable, but maybe not for the right reasons.
I love that. Next question, between 1 and 30.
We'll go number 5.
Number 5. Oh, pineapple on a pizza. Yes or no?
Now, I had this argument with a number of friends of mine. I think the Icelandic president and prime minister were bang out of order. Pineapple can appear on a pizza. I'm The Icelandics were wrong. The Italians are wrong. Pineapple is an optional, wonderful dish on a pizza. And to you, Scott Turner, my good friend who said this is wrong, equal rights for pineapple on pizza.
I think there's a whole movement which agrees with Scott that this is wrong. Okay, question number 4 between 1
I
and
didn't realize this was going to be so controversial. We will go question number 4.
Question number 4. Ooh, if you would be a kitchen utensil, what would you be and why?
Recipe book.
Why?
Because recipe books are full of good ideas.
Okay, last question. Number 5. Number between
We will go
1
with Dennis Bergkamp's number 10.
Oh, number 10. Ooh, now this is getting personal. What is a dish your mom made you absolutely hated?
Do you know what? When I grew up, we lived next to a river, and my dad would go in and pull out trout, and my mum would cook the trout, and with my brother and I would just have to try and hide as much of it as possible. The cat got some. It was awful, and for years, and this is really criminal. For years, I didn't eat fish, and it's only sort of in the last 15, 20 years that I've sort of realised how wonderful fish is. And I think it's just because, like, I was traumatized as a child by bad trout.
So if mom is listening, he doesn't mean it. I think he loved that. He's just, he didn't want to be boring. So, but with that, that completes rapid fire questions. Thank you, Richard, for being here today. Thanks for giving so freely of the gift of your time. Thanks for sharing your insights around marketing. I absolutely love this conversation. You need to promise me we need to do a 2.0. And any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Do you know what? On those success factors, just think about what are 5 things that you do, 5 factors each month that define whether you're successful. Mm-hmm. They don't have to be from society. They can be whatever you want. And then look at those and think about how can you use them to make good decisions? How can you use them to bring success to yourself? Just really have a deep think about what are those 5 factors that define whether you're successful each month. And
Great
it's
stuff.
so liberating.
Great stuff. I really appreciate it. And to our listeners, if you haven't done so, make sure you guys look up Richard. His information is in the show notes. You guys need to get deep into his content, the way he thinks, the way he looks at marketing. And the messages he has out there is universal. It goes to anybody. If you have windows, if you do toilet seats, or if you do food, it's absolutely amazing. And Richard, we appreciate you being part of this. Thanks for calling in. Also to our listeners, make sure you like this episode. Let us know in the comment section what you really liked about the conversation. If Richard needs to go back and to apologize his mom about his fish comment, I think it was very hurtful, Mom, so we really don't support that. And then also, if you haven't done so, make sure you join our private community, which is the Disruptive Chef Club. So, and that's it. Richard, thanks for being here today. We really appreciate it. And to our listeners, remember to disrupt your kitchen, fire up your career, stay hungry for change. I'm Christian, the Disruptive Chef Entrepreneur host, here with Mr. Richard today. We are signing off. We are out of here. So be the change, be the challenge, and be the chef who sets the world on fire. Until we see you guys again on the next episode, go out there and stay disruptive, everybody. Richard, thanks again.